Hades ruled the underworld for 600 years without rebellion, a reign built not on cruelty but quiet necessity. The throne room stands silent now, its obsidian walls echoing with freed dead's footfalls. A triumphant footfalls gods conqueror death, finality. Unspoken chains lie release broken, their breaths for the victims first time in centuries wandering aimless. A triumphant footfalls gods conqueror death, then unspoken chains lie release broken, their breaths for the victims first time in centuries wandering aimless. Hades ruled where light dares not follow, while gods carved their will across sky and sea, he held the weight of what remains when fire fades. His domain was not conquest but covenant silent, unyielding, unchallenged. What made him immune to the chaos that fractured his brothers? Olympus thrived on spectacle, he governed what silence conceals. Even in death his throne did not crumble, the dead did not rebel, the gates did not shudder, a king who needed no crown to command obedience. The others bargained, betrayed, bled for favor. He required only acknowledgement, the unspoken pact that what lies below must be honored. Why, then, does history whisper his name like a secret? Not all power roars, some endure, and endures he did, until the final breath of his reign became the first wind of release. The underworld exhaled. The world above never noticed. The underworld exhaled, its breath hung in shadows, a mist of unspoken debts and unwept tears. Hades did not rise to power. He was thrust into it, crown placed by necessity, not ambition. His siblings swallowed by Kronos' hunger, he alone bore the unenviable weight. To rule the dead is to rule in silence. No hymns, no altars, only asphodels rustle and Styx's sigh. The Olympians danced in sunlight. Zeus hurled thunder, Ares reveled in carnage, but Hades moved unseen, a shadow stitching the world's seams. His dominion was not a throne but a threshold. Every soul that crossed his path carried a story he could not change, a fate he could not bend. He did not hunger for offerings. He demanded them not for greed but for order. The dead must stay buried, the living must forget. What god but Hades knows the name of every man who dies unremembered? What god but Hades hears the plea of the forsaken, the whisper of a child's last breath? He does not weep, he does not rage, he accepts. The weight of endings is his alone, and in that weight a quiet dignity blooms unseen, unspoken, absolute. The world above celebrates heroes. It never wonders who ensures their victories are not swallowed by chaos. It never thanks the keeper of the gate, but the gate remains. And behind it Hades waits, not as a king, as a guardian. Hades did not claim his throne with fire or blood. The underworld was given, not taken. While Zeus split the sky, Poseidon claimed the waves, and Ares devoured battlefields, Hades received a realm no god wished. The dead do not rebel, the living do not cheer. His power is measured in silence. Others carve their names into history. Hades lets the earth forget him. Kratos in his rage never raised a blade against the god of gates. He knew better. The dead do not negotiate, they do not bargain, they obey. And so Hades was never betrayed, never hunted. His enemies were born not of gods but of fear. What is a king without a crown? What is duty without applause? Hades answered with rivers and roads. He built the asphodel meadows not for glory, but for order. He barred the furies not to punish, but to preserve. Every soul that crossed the Styx was a thread in a tapestry no god could see. Odin lost an eye for wisdom. Ares bound himself to a warlord's wrath. Hades made no grand sacrifice. His was the quiet surrender of self to purpose. He became the weight of the gate, the shadow behind the flame. The price of peace no one admits to paying. Does dignity require a chorus? Hades was in the unbroken chain of his rule. No hymns, no heroes. Only the steady hand of a steward who knew the world above could not survive without the world below. The dead must stay buried, the living must forget. And Hades, ever the unseen king, ensured both. The halls of his realm echo with unspoken truths. Kratos finds him not in shadow, but in light, pale, unyielding, as if the bones of the earth itself glow beneath his feet. Hades stands not as a god bested, but as a sovereign meeting his heir. His breath is the wind through crypts, his voice the settling of dust. He does not beg for mercy, he does not curse his killer. The blade parts his flesh like a hymn. What does it mean to rule a kingdom that cannot fall, to hold a crown no rival can claim? Hades has spent eternity in the dark, not as a prisoner, but as a guardian. The living call him the god who was denied. The dead know him as the one who never needed to reach above. When the Spartan's hand shakes, Hades steadies it. A god's final act is not to fight, but to witness. The Olympians do not weep, they do not strike the earth in rage, they cannot. Hades' realm is their silent pact, their unspoken debt. Without his chains, the dead would rise not as ghosts, but as a tide. He was not betrayed, he was necessary. And necessity does not demand loyalty, only obedience. The cold of his absence lingers, the air grows heavier. Kratos feels it first, a weight in his lungs, a whisper in his blood. The world above will forget his name. The world below will remember him as the doorkeeper who never closed the gate. What is dignity, if not the courage to let the story end where it must? Hades did not die as a king, he died as the foundation. And foundations do not scream when they crack, they simply hold. But the cost, his breath left, chains shattered. The dead broke free, unbound by his final exhale. A silence louder than Warhigh's sacrifice, the cosmic price paid in stillness. Foundations crumble, kings scream. Hades became the whisper between epochs. The chains of the dead were shattered. Souls, long frozen in torment, inhaled the light of release. Yet the underworld's rivers did not overflow. The asphodel fields remained still. Hades had not abandoned his realm, had unmade its need for him. His death was a thread pulled carefully from a tapestry, not a tear. The Pantheon wars that followed were not born of his failure, but of his absence. Gods who once feared his silence now warred over the void he left. Mortals freed from his grip did not rejoice. They wandered unmoored, their debts unpaid, their fates unfinished. The three judges still sat, the river still Styx. The stones of the underworld remembered his hand. Had he not orchestrated this, a kingdom without a king, yet not in chaos? A god's final law, that death itself should not fear death. What price then was paid in the spaces between? The answer lies in the quiet. In the way the dead, now free, never rushed to the surface. They lingered at the threshold, as if waiting for a master who would not return. The cost was not in the breaking but in the becoming. Hades, who ruled in shadow, became the shadow of a rule. His dignity was not in the throne, but in the act of letting it burn. The cosmos does not weep, but it remembers. And in its memory, order was more sacred than power. Hades did not fall screaming into oblivion. His final breath was a sigh, a door closing without sound. The underworld did not shudder, the rivers did not boil. The dead wandered freely, yet the balance he maintained held. His absence was not a void, it was a silent revolution. Tyranny lifted like a shadow at dawn. No Olympian raised a hand to stop it, no thunder rolled in protest. The god of silence had spoken, and the cosmos listened. Kratos became a ghost, a wanderer, a father unmoored. Atreus, the boy who would be Loki, learned his first lesson in shadows. Power is not held, it is released. The chains Hades broke were not his own. They were the ones he had forged for others. Trace the arc of his legacy. The dead do not rebel. The gates stand open. A king's dignity lies not in fear, but in the quiet certainty that when he is gone, the world will keep turning steadfast, unbroken, unafraid. What kind of god leaves no war in his wake? What kind of ruler ensures his realm thrives without a single command? Hades did not need to scream. His throne was a promise. The dead would rest, the living would forget, and the balance would outlast the hands that shaped it. The underworld breathes, the cosmos turns. And in the stillness where a god once stood, there is no mourningly the weight of a silence that changed everything. The underworld breathes, the silence holds. No chains rattle, no gates screamingly, shadows stretch where a god once walked. His death was no collapse. It was a hand lifted, not in plea, but in final refusal to be defined by the light above. The realm does not mourn, it remembers. The rivers still carve their paths, the stones still hum with old oaths. What was a prison now cradles something quieter, a balance not shattered but unproven. Did the Olympians expect rage, a throne left smoldering? They did not reckon with the weight of a god who chose stillness over legacy. The dead do not whisper his name in grief. They whisper it in the way the asphodel fields bow, in the way the air tastes of iron and resolve. His absence is not a wound, it is a threshold. The cosmos turns, the underworld endures. And in the space where a king once stood, there is no only the shape of a man who let go, not of power, but of the need to be seen. Hades ruled a kingdom without fanfare. While others carved their names into storms and spilt blood, his domain was measured in silence. The dead did not cheer his reign, yet none defied it. What power demands no obedience? What rule requires no crown? The gods of light feared eclipse. Hades alone faced no shadow of doubt. He did not barter for loyalty or chain his subjects with chains. The wealthy left him offerings, not out of fear, but because they remembered, because they knew his realm was not a prison, but a promise. Zeus hurled thunder to be heard. Hades listened to be understood. When Ares stained the earth, Hades turned his face, yet never his duty. His halls were not a punishment, but a pause, a place where the cosmos exhaled. Did the others envy him? The weight they bore was visible, but his was absolute. No god carried the end of every life without weeping for the cost, yet he did. Not with rage, not with regret, only with the stillness of a door that never closes. In the end, when Olympus crumbled and new gods rose, his name remained. Not in hymns, but in the hush between heartbeats. The final mirror does not reflect, it reveals. And in its glass we see not a tyrant, but the only God who ever truly let go. The dead are free, their shadows stretch thin, dissolving into the cold Hades once kept at bay. No wails of release, no triumphant crescently, the silence of souls unbound, like mist retreating from a forgotten shore. The chains, forged in black iron, snap with a sound like shattering glass. Not a roar, not a scream, a sigh, the underworld's breath exhaled after eons. Hades did not die screaming. His final act was not a battle, not a betrayal. The canonical texts do not paint his passing as a failure. They do not whisper of a blade at his throat, of a rival's hand closing around his throat. Only this, a god relinquishing his reign, his realm unraveling not in chaos but in quiet surrender. The cold he ruled begins to thaw. The rivers Styx and Lethe, once unyielding, now flow without barrier. The dead, who bore his name as both curse and covenant, step into the unknown unchased, unhaunted. Above, the Olympians do not weep. They do not mourn the god who asked only to be left alone. But the earth itself seems to hush, as if remembering a weight no longer pressing. And in the dust where his throne once stood, a single line lingers from the Iliad, spoken not as curse but as truth. I did not seek this throne. I was given a kingdom of shadows and I kept it whole. The dead are free, the chains are broken. And Hades, the quiet god of the underworld, remains the most dignified Olympian, not by choice, but by the unyielding necessity of his final, unspoken vow. With his final breath, Hades unchained the souls he'd sworn to bind. The underworld's veil tore, freeing what lay beneath, but dignity, even in death, demands silence. What shadows stir where his light once reigned? What truth